Producing more, consuming less. That is the new motto for our homestead channel. Basically, what I'm trying to do here, I mowed the grass and I thought this grass would be made where I could make it into hay. Then it rained for 3 days and I don't know if I can, but the idea is still there that we have something that looks just like tall grass, which we still have some in the back. Maybe I'll use that when it starts to dry out. And so I was going to make hay instead of buying hay this winter. Not sure if that'll work out, but the intent is still there. And so what the channel is about, what I'm trying to teach my subscribers, my viewers, is we don't need to consume. We actually want to be producing as much as we can of our needs and wants. So you get it from your own land. You're not dependent on corporations, on others, on foreign countries, on enemies. And so this video is going to be about changing your mindset from being a consumer to being a producer. Let's talk about the apple tree here on the homestead. We only have one, so it's got apples here. Each of these is gonna produce like a couple bites of food when we get them picked. And so that'll be a little bit of food this year. But next year we're gonna try to take better care of the tree, maybe do some chemical-free remedies. Here's a good looking apple way up there. I don't know if I can zoom in on it enough. Right there. Anyway, so using some chemical remedies and pruning it correctly, we're going to try to get bigger, better apples. So maybe we produce 100 good apples next year instead of what looks like just a couple. Anyway, so that's kind of the idea. So if you watch our channel a lot, you're going to find we get some crazy idea how to make a meal for 40 cents or how to dry your basement. And it's all about the same process of find a need or a want in your life, probably a need, but maybe a want, and resolve it without increasing your consumption insanely. So you could, for a meal, you can easily spend $10, $15, $20 at a restaurant per person. But I showed you in the one video how to make, it was actually a gourmet Korean meal that really cost us only about 40 cents, maybe 40.5 cents per person. But I only made it for one person. The rest of the family wasn't home that day. So somewhere around here, I'll try to get a link on your screen for if you would rather watch that than the rest of this video, but I don't recommend that because I've got a really cool video coming up. One of my concepts is how rainwater collection, this water comes off a gutter and then drips down into that bucket, and that's rainwater collection. And we actually drink that water. We filter it through a towel first and then through a Berkey filter. And I'm going to assert that rainwater collection and some of the other concepts we talk about here, but especially rainwater collection, can really help the world have more peace, less wars. So a lot of people have a water meter under the ground, under this little piece of metal there. And what they do is they pay every month, or however often they're billed, for water. And it goes into their house, something like this, and they just pay for water and consume, and the water company has to provide water for them and everybody else. And so I assert that if people who watch our channel start producing their own water through rainwater catchment or a well or something like that, you reduce overall dependence on the water supplies, and so then they're much less likely to run out. Now, we're blessed to live in a part of the U.S. where water supplies are very, very plentiful, and limitations in water supply are very unlikely. But most of the people of the world do not have that luxury, and so that's why I talk about it. And even here, it is a little bit of a resource problem because sometimes our water bills get very expensive, and that can be damaging to the family, even if it doesn't damage our country, our region. And so if you get into desert areas, a lot of the wars are actually fought over water access. The next part, I'm going to go into the scriptures, and I'm going to talk about what I think is the beginning of the disagreement between the Israelis and the Palestinians. Okay, I'm going to be reading in Genesis 26, starting in verse 15, although this sounds like it's actually going on from before. Maybe 14. And he came to have possessions of flocks and possessions of herds and a great body of servants, and the Philistines envied him. I think this is Yitzchak or Isaac. So and the Philistines had stopped up all the wells which his father's servants had dug in the days of Abraham his father, and filled them with dirt. And Abimelech said to Yitzchak, "Go away from us, for you are much mightier than we." So Yitzchak went from there and pitched his tent in the Wadi Gerar and dwelt there. And Yitzchak dug again the wells of water which they had dug in the days of Abraham his father, for the Philistines had stopped them up after the death of Abraham. And he called them by the names which his father had called them. But when Yitzchak's servants dug in the wadi and found a well of running water there, the herdsmen of Gerar strove with Yitzchak's herdsmen, Isaac's herdsmen, saying, "The water is ours." And they called the name of the well Esek. And they dug another well, and they strove over that one too, and he called its name Sitnah. Anyway, I think this is the beginning of the differences between the Palestinians, the Philistines, and the children of Israel. But this is even before Israel was an adult. He may have been a child at the time that passage was. But my point is, if you come to today and there's fights between the Palestinians and the Israelis, what are they actually fighting over? And I would assert that water, or tension around water, is a big deal, because Israel sells water to Palestinians and makes them unhappy that they're giving up their water that they need desperately to the Palestinians, and then the Palestinians are stressed out because they're trying to pay for all this water, which I'm sure is not very cheap. Well, I don't know. I don't understand all the details of what's going on. Some might be sent as aid. It's very unclear to me. But regardless, as we were getting the reports of October 7th, there was talk about Israel possibly cutting off water to Palestine, the Palestinians. And it's like, they should... I don't recommend any type of war, but they're very stressed because Israel controls their water, and there's rumors Israel is adding chemicals to reduce their population through the water, and that would be very unlikely because it's so traceable. But the rumor exists, and some people feel that it might be there. And so there's just a lot of tension because of water. If everybody in Palestine and everybody in Israel put water catchment systems on their house, they would have almost enough water for each family just from their own production on their own land, and you would have a lot less tension between neighbors because I'm doing my thing here and I don't need to control what you're doing. I don't need to send bombs your way to make you do what I want because I have my needs met here. And so that's my theory, that water catchment and generally producing more, depending less, consuming less, I think that is the path to world peace. And we can debate that. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. But that's my generalized theory. That's what my channel is all about. But water is just the beginning. Then comes food production. If you have good water, then you can grow food, whatever. This is strawberries, but all the different foods require water to produce. And so, or almost all of them. And so, once you have good water situation, you can produce your own food. And that massively reduces your dependence on those around you, especially your enemies. And so it just becomes a cascading effect of less and less dependence on people, less and less need to control what they're doing. As long as they're not actively harming you, you can just live your life and let them live theirs. And so I'm going to put a link at the end here to my water video where I teach you how to make a water system that could cause world peace, but we'll see.